The Harriston Minto Fall Fair is full of a variety of activities and events, like an engaging ag awareness building, a fun and flashy midway, the largest dairy show in Wellington County, an adorable baby show, hundreds of crops, crafts, and baking on exhibit, and a very popular demolition derby, just to name a few. But who would have thought all these activities and events that make up our fall fair today could have begun with just a few furry and feathery animals? Ladies and gentlemen, honorable judges, valued sponsor town of Minto, and fellow contestants, it's true. It all began back in 1859 when three gentlemen by the name of John Holland, Joshua Harrison, and Alexander Dow formed the Minto Agricultural Society and Minto's first ever fall fair. However, the difference between the fall fair then and the fall fair today is that back then, the first fall fairs were markets where livestock was bought and sold. Since then, these early markets have evolved into the fall fair as we know it today. For me, it's kind of ironic that the first ever Harriston Minto Fall Fair began with a group of furry and feathery animals, because when I think back to my first memories and experiences with the fall fair, they also began with lots of fur and feather fun too. In fact, back when I was about 4 years old, my very first memory of the fall fair was going to the petting zoo. I can remember walking hand in hand with my mom and brother down to the ag building on that beautiful Saturday afternoon after what felt like the longest parade. I can also remember a lot of other things too, like the overwhelming smell seeping from the building as we walked closer and closer, that at the time I can only best describe as barn smell, how enormous that building felt to me, and the number and different kinds of animals that fit into that enormous building. There were pigs, cows, goats, and sheep, but the animals that I remember the most were all the baby chicks. I can remember my brother and I kneeling down beside a small crate, forming a small bowl shape with our hands, and a yellow chick being placed inside. This was the first time I had ever held a baby chick, so it was very special to me. Another memory I have of the fall fair is attending the 4-H dairy show, which attending on the Friday night of the fall fair has become a tradition for my family. I can remember sitting up in the stands and watching each dairy cow be led around the ring. However, my favorite part of watching the 4-H dairy show was not watching the cows. It was watching the people leading them. I know that it takes a lot of practice and hard work for the 4-H members to be able to lead an animal so precisely just by poking and prodding at them in a certain way. Although I was never part of 4-H, I do know what it is like to be in control of an animal, specifically a dog. That's because one year, I entered a dog into the Harriston Minto Fall Fair's mutt show. However, the dog I entered in the fair was not mine because I didn't have one. But just because I didn't have a dog of my very own doesn't mean that I didn't want one. Back when I was about 9 or 10 years old, I became obsessed with dogs. I used to sign up books from the school library, draw pictures of me walking or teaching my dog new tricks, and constantly talk about dogs and what we would name our dog with my cousin Abby, who also shared my same obsession. Most importantly, I wanted a dog so I could enter it in the mutt show for the fall fair. When I asked my mom if we could get a dog, I was shut down. Unfortunately, although my mom grew up on a farm with lots of animals, including dogs, she was against the idea of me having one. Her reasons, still controversial to me, included, Margaret, we live in town. A dog needs space to run around. And, Margaret, we go away a lot. What will we do with the dog then? Take it with us? And finally, my personal favorite, and I'm sure the most popular response to kids in my position, Margaret, a dog is a lot of responsibility. Too much for a kid like you. Devastated by her answer, I asked her, but Mom, if I can't have a dog, how will I enter into the mutt show? She hemmed and she hawed and she thought about it, and then she answered with, why don't you just borrow your Uncle Gary's new puppy, Norman? Although this is not exactly what I had pictured, I compromised and I asked my Uncle Gary if I could enter Norman for the mutt show. He agreed, and I was very pleased that I would definitely have a dog to enter. That summer, I spent a lot of quality time with Norman. A couple times a week, Uncle Gary would bring Norman over to my grandma's house, where together we would train for the mutt show. Our training basically consisted of laps around my grandma's house, with Norman on the leash. Looking back, I'm not sure who was really walking who. Even though he was a puppy, he was still a fair size, and he wasn't the most obedient dog. Because of Norman and his teeth, I think my brother and I lost more balls that summer than any other. Even so, Norman and I worked really hard during the months preceding the fair, and I think we both felt we were ready for the big day. But thinking back to when the mutt show finally arrived, I cannot remember a lot of details about the day. I cannot tell you how many dogs entered, or what classes Norman and I entered, or even what or if we won anything. However, what I do remember is the feeling of excitement and pride I had, because for one afternoon, I got to own a dog. This is an example of how the Harriston Minto Fall Fair provides an opportunity for all community members and guests to get to experience things in a way that they may not normally get to. It offers an opportunity for members of the community to showcase their talents and skills, take pride in their accomplishments, socialize with members of the community after the long summer months, and be enveloped in the world of agriculture. Whether it's being a celebrity as you ride a float in the parade, unleashing your inner rock star at the talent show, showcasing your artistic side through a painting in the art exhibit, being a farmer in the Ag Awareness Building, or being the proud owner of a dog during the Met Show. And it all started with some furry and feathery animals. Or did it? The more I think about it, the more I think that maybe it didn't really start like that at all. Because without the three gentlemen who created the Minto Agricultural Society, there would be no fall fair. Just as the fall fair has evolved, so has the Minto Agricultural Society. Today, what is now known as the Harriston Minto Agricultural Society is made up of members of the community who share a passion for the fall fair, just like my passion for this special event. They spend countless hours throughout the whole year promoting agriculture, supporting many local groups and organizations, thinking of ways to improve our town, and of course, planning for those 3 special days, the 3rd week of September. This 3rd week of September, I hope you will join the Harriston Minto Agricultural Society and myself in attending the Harriston Minto Fall Fair, where you can take part in the variety of activities and events that our Fall Fair has to offer. Who knows, maybe your weekend will start with some fur and feather fun too.